time to dive into the For FF's Sake podcast. FF's Sake podcast. The place for your weekly dose of fantasy football advice, breakdown, and debate. Redraft, dynasty, sleepers, and buy or sell candidates. It all gets discussed right here. Now, let's go to your hosts, two guys that say the other is an idiot. Ian Steele and Evan Harris.
Welcome in to For FF's Sake. That's For Fantasy Football Sake podcast. Evan Harris here. And good news, you don't have to listen to Ian this week. We have a good friend of mine, MC Jamar Mark. I don't know what you want to go by on the show today. A man of many names and of many fantasy football teams. I met him in a dynasty league. Mark, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, we can go with Marky Mark like we do in our league podcast. That's
Marky Mark.
Something I'm comfortable with. Yeah. So, man, I'm glad to be on with you today. It's been fun being in the league with you. We do the podcast ourselves and have an awesome league. I've been doing fantasy just about 6 years now, so I'm pretty new to it still compared to a lot of you guys. Older than a lot of you guys, as you let me know every day. But I was kind of late getting into the fantasy game, but I won a couple of championships, and I'm doing okay with it anyway. So glad to be with you today.
I like the subtle, humble brag. I like I got into it late. I won some championships. No big deal. I enjoy it. But check out absolutely. So you guys do a fantasy football podcast just of our league, which I think is one of the coolest things ever. Yeah. I think it's going to get to a point where we're going to build a fan base and people are going to be waiting for somebody to drop from our league. It's getting to that level, right?
I think so, man. It's, we might get up to double-digit listeners here before too long. So in a 10-man league with 11 managers. Yeah.
So
there you go.
Things. But no, for sure. If you're watching this and you're a little curious about that, search NAO Show. That's NAO Show. It's on Ian Steele's YouTube page. I think I uploaded one this week, so you'll be able to find it that way. We're getting up there in the search rankings. You can find it that way.
Yeah.
And
we have a lot of
also
fun.
New Age Outlaws Dynasty.us. Not wordy at all, but that's the website. So check it out so you can see that I have not been very successful in the last two seasons. Mark made the playoffs last year, and if you want to hear more about that league, definitely go listen to that because it's a lot of fun. You and I got to give them a shout out, Sean and Tank Top Mike. That's going to make people want to go listen right there.
Tank Top Mike.
It's a lot of fun. Halloween edition was fun too, but I digress.
Yeah, it sure was.
So let's get into everything that we're going to talk about tonight. We are in week 9 of the NFL season. It actually starts while we're recording right now, so we won't talk a lot, obviously, about Thursday Night Football. So much to unpack against the Jets and Colts for fantasy relevancy. I know it's a true shame. But we're going to get into some news first. The first news action, of course, Michael Thomas out for the season. Probably not the biggest news stories, but it's still a news story because I think a lot of guys, Mark, whether it be in redraft, stashing a guy on their bench all year, really hoping he's going to put him over the top for the rest of the year. I mean, he was still an 8th or 9th round pick in redraft. Yeah. And then in Dynasty, you had a lot of guys, including myself, make a trade for him, expecting him to be a difference maker again. Depending on when you traded for him, Mark, there was a stretch where everybody thought he was going to be ready as the season started. And then we hit a mark where, he's going to be out 4 or 5 weeks. Now it's week 9 and he shut down for the season. A guy that was by far the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football, almost every format until he abruptly wasn't.
Yeah. It seems one of these things where it seems to be more to the story than we know. Getting surgery in June when you got training camp starting in July is kind of an odd thing. The timing of this announcement is a little odd. It's right after the trade deadline, and everybody's been counting on him coming back at this time. And trade deadline comes and goes, and he didn't get traded, and he's still there with him. And he says, "You know what? I'm going to have to get another procedure." So I don't know if there's more behind the scenes that we don't know, or if he just did a little bit too much damage to it last season. I think he tried to play through it a lot for Breeze more than anything in Breeze last season. So to me, it seems like there's more to the story than we know. And if it is that he's injured that badly, I think the lesson learned is that you see a lot of these guys trying to rush back in there, and they end up hurting themselves worse and missing more times if they just go ahead and heal up like they're supposed to. Take the time that they should, then maybe they play more net games than they do by trying to rush back in there. So it's just a weird story to me, but I almost feel like if it is truly that he's just injured that badly, he should have been resting up and thinking about his future.
The craziest part of this whole saga, if you will, at this point, and I'm deeply invested. I made a big trade for him in the league. I didn't draft him in the redraft. I traded for him in my defense before it came out that he actually didn't have that offseason surgery and had tried to rehab it. But as I've dug into it, the craziest thing about it to me is the initial injury happened with, minutes left in a game that was well out of reach and established. It's one of those things where you didn't need him on the field. Maybe he's pushing because he's that alpha male type guy, but gosh, if a lot of people complained last week about, the Eagles, they just put a whooping on somebody, and Hurts was out by halftime. Devontae Smith wasn't playing by, the third quarter. Be thankful. Would you rather Devontae Smith play and him tear an ACL in the fourth quarter of a game that's a blowout, right? I know it doesn't really help you, but I think those Michael Thomas owners would have rather him been healthy all of last season and going into this season than what happened.
Absolutely.
Interesting there. And a whole dynamic with that team, right? Because now the quarterback's down. Taysom Hill comes in. I think Taysom Hill, I saw a few things on Twitter this week. Who does Taysom Hill help if he's the quarterback? Taysom Hill helps Taysom Hill. I don't know if he helps any of the receivers. I think all the receivers now come, if they weren't already, very much streamers. I think if Taysom Hill starts at quarterback, it hurts Kamara. I think worst case scenario, I know as football fans, we are never rooting for Trevor Siemian. But if you are a Kamara owner or if you are a Callaway owner hoping he does something, I think Simeon's who you want there. You think we could see the rookie Ian Book? Because they had an option to trade him. They've kept him on the active roster.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't count on it. I really wouldn't count on it. Simeon was a good enough game manager to probably be the clear backup there. But with Hill coming in there, definitely it seems to me that you kind of have to drop everybody down a peg, and the passing volume may not be there that you need. It could be kind of a hit and miss, one guy this week and another guy the next.
I think if Simeon does get the reins, I'm looking at that tight end position a little bit more. Sometimes that's a quarterback's best friend, especially even a game manager looking in the zones. I may bump up. Is Troutman hurt right now? I should know that, but I may bump up the starting tight end there.
I think he's still in there. He was nursing something, but I don't think it's been anything that's kept him out.
Good deal. So I may bump him up, and then I would really watch that wide receiver core because they end up having a guy that sits on some of them underneath routes. Simeon's not going to air it out like Jameis was. He's going to be, hitches, inside slants. That's what I'd be looking for him. So that could get interesting. I think Callaway right now could be a buy. And I only say that because you're not going to buy a whole lot, right? You're not spending a whole lot for Callaway. So it could be somebody you go grab, especially now that, Michael Thomas is out for the rest of the season and you're getting a guy who's going to look underneath a little bit more.
Yeah.
Now this next news segment really hurts, Mark. If there's anybody that was projecting a Henry injury, though, it was you. So I almost feel fitting that you're on the show this week to talk about this one. I think it came a little bit later than maybe you thought. But Derrick Henry is done, not for the season. Okay. I don't think he's done for the season. I think he's back for maybe regular season. I think he'll come back for the playoffs. I really do. He may come back. the thing is, I think he could be healthy enough to come back week 16, 17 from what I'm reading. But I think the Titans play like Houston and the Jets those last 2 weeks. So he's not going to come back for those games. Unless you just want to tune him up. So I do think the Titans still make the playoffs. So that one could be interesting. I was talking with another league mate of ours today, Marky Mark, and I told him, I said, if Henry comes back week 15 like he wants to, that's what Henry's goal is 15. He may still be the rushing leader. He's got such a gap on it. If he gets 3 games at the end of the year and healthy, he may still take the rushing crown, which would be a feat. But Henry is out. Mark, I'm going to let you lead off with this one. What is the Titans backfield going to look like the rest of the way through, and who's the guy you're leaning on, if any?
Yeah, if the question is who's going to replace Henry, the answer, of course, is nobody is going to replace him. And, just for the record, I certainly never root for injuries or try to forecast injuries, but I was saying that the usage had me concerned, and that the history is not good for that kind of usage moving forward. So that was
not
kind of
to interrupt
my point
you, but isn't that like the opposite of what we all want as fantasy owners? We're always clamoring for more usage, and we're like,
more volume. Yeah.
Just thought that's kind of
maybe
funny.
we should back off a little bit. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, definitely it's not what we want. But McNichols, I think, is a good backup. He's a good athlete. He's got good size, 5'9", 214. He's a 3 down back. And I kind of wonder if maybe he could have had more playing time if he was on another team and not playing behind Henry. He's had some good moments. You know that better than anybody watching him every week. But I think he can come in there and he can do a good job. Of course, no one's going to replace what Henry does, and so of course they bring in AP and they bring in Foreman. Now, Adrian Peterson is 36 now, but I would never count him out, because the guy is a workout warrior. That's the thing that's kept him going all these years. I'll bet he's in as good a shape as a 36-year-old running back can be. We'll have to see what that is. He definitely seems like he dropped off some over the last couple of years, but if he can come in and give you 10 carries, and split it a little bit with McNichols, it keeps McNichols from getting too much work, because McNichols is not going to go in there and do what Henry was doing. He's not going to get 30 carries a game. It's not going to work. So, of course, they brought in Dante Foreman, and he's a sad tale of someone that had a lot of promise that got derailed by an Achilles injury, and I'd love to see him do a little something. But it remains to be seen, because he hasn't caught on with anybody else yet. So you kind of have to wonder how that's going to work out. They'll know pretty soon what they have in him when they get him out there in practice. But it's going to be a committee, I'm sure. Dante Hill was in there a little bit last week. If he was anything, they might not have brought in AP and Foreman. So he's probably just the practice squad guy that maybe can be pressed into action, in a pinch. But definitely it's going to have to be a committee moving forward.
So this is definitely one that's close to my heart, right? And I can kind of go a little bit in depth. I haven't necessarily done a lot of research, but I can just tell you from the eye test, right? And just knowing the team's history a little bit on this one. So what's really interesting is, from a fantasy football perspective, if you're looking for the safest bet of that backfield, Jeremy McNichols is the guy. And I'm going to put you on to something, Mark. Okay. You're a guy who likes nicknames, so you'll really appreciate this. Do you know what McNichols' nickname is?
I do not.
McWeapon. Oh yeah. Jeremy McWeapon. So
who gave him that nickname?
I think just Titans Twitter. So this is a guy who's really done some nice things in the preseason. He's done some okay things in games when he's got an opportunity. He's actually the second leading receiver on the team, which is kind of an interesting stat, because he doesn't see the field very, very much, but he had a couple big games of film. And I was trying to look for a stat, and I'm just not going to find it. So I'm not going to look, but anyways, so I think he's the safest bet from a fantasy perspective of if you want to go grab a guy from the Titans backfield. Adrian Peterson's very interesting. The stat I was looking for on him is debut games for Adrian Peterson. His worst debut game of his career debuting either with a new team or back from injury is like 85 yards and a touchdown. He's at a 196-yard game on a debut. Now, obviously, he wasn't 36 when he did that, but he's had some just abnormal type debuts. So it's kind of interesting there. I won't count the Titans out on anything, but my sleeper of that backfield is a guy you mentioned, actually. I think for this weekend itself, I think Dante Foreman could end up leading the Titans in rushing. And I'll tell you why. He was with the offense last year. And he had he looks like a mini Derrick Henry, right? He's kind of got a thicker build. Yeah. He runs really hard. And for running backs in the NFL, it's a lot about scheme, right? You can see a guy really excel in a scheme, go to a different offense and not look any resemblance to the same guy. I think Dante Foreman almost looked like he was making a little bit of a comeback last year. The Titans on those fringe guys are notorious for, look, you're a fringe guy on this offense. You get hurt, you get cut. That's just what happens. McNichols has been cut a few times or sitting down to the practice squad. Sargent, the same thing. That's just what they do with those guys. And I understand it from a team building perspective. He got cut. He actually, if you remember, got picked up by the Falcons, which I thought was an interesting landing spot because he landed with former offensive coordinator from the Titans, Arthur Smith. But this is a guy that knows the system, right? And I think he has some talent. And here's the thing. How many NFL running backs would love the opportunity to get 25 handoffs a game? And you think about it, when guys get to that level, because Henry can have games where he has 16 carries for 30-something yards, and then he breaks a big one. I think a lot of NFL running backs can do that. I'm not saying NFL running backs are Henry. Don't get it twisted. The difference between Henry and those other backs is the backs that are going to be filling in this week, Peterson, McNichols, Foreman, they're not going to see 9 guys in the box, right? They're going to see 7, 8, sometimes 6, I think, which is really going to change things. I think it really depends on the offense is going to depend on if Julio's healthy to help really put some pressure on the secondary. But here's the thing. The Titans aren't going to change their identity. There is still going to be 25 to 30 rushes a game. They're just not all going to be by the same guy. And it would not shock me in the least over these next few games to see them start riding a guy. If he gets hurt, if they give Peterson 25 carries for the next 3 games, he'll probably get hurt. They'll just give Foreman 25 carries for the next 3 games until Henry's back. They're not going to change their identity. Mike Vrabel is way too stubborn for that. And he's a pretty good football coach. So I think when you look at that, I think all 3 of those guys right now are worth waiver pickups. I don't think Hillard will be. I think he had his opportunity to earn a role in the preseason and didn't. He really got beat out by McCarr Sargent, who I was surprised that they cut. That one kind of shocked me. Maybe he just hasn't looked good in on the practice squad. I don't know. But I think so. Here's my strategy. If I own McNichols, I think he can be a flex play every week right now. If I own Peterson, I'm holding him for this week and next week because it's 1 week in the system. If Foreman leads the carries this week, I'm still going to hold on to Peterson and see if he ends up taking the role, right? And if I own Foreman, I'm hoping I'm right that he's going to lead the team in rushing, and then I hope our rest of our league mates don't listen to this. I'm trading him after this week because I don't think he holds the job per se. But it's interesting that it's kind of a toss-up, right? I can – you like how I gave all 3 of those options, Mark, and I can be right with any of them?
Yeah. you got a 1 in 3 chance there. There you go.
Cover my bases a little bit. But no, I think we've hammered on that enough. That's probably going to be the longest segment just because it's my beloved Titans, so I apologize.
There you go. That's all right.
Our next segment is Odd Man Out. Mark, you named this when I came up with the idea and you gave it a name. I like it. Odd Man Out. So what we're going to talk about in this segment is you have a guy that has not only taken over the role for an injured player, but is playing pretty decent or pretty well. What do you do with him, right? Whether it be dynasty and it's a younger back or whether it be redraft and you're just not really sure. Guys coming back from injuries, as we've already talked about with Michael Thomas, can be kind of tricky. Do you sell a guy a week early or chance not selling him in time and losing all value? That's what we're going to talk about. And the first backfield we're going to talk about is the Carolina backfield. The second best rookie running back in terms of points, I think, he might be third actually, would be Chuba Hubbard, which I don't think anybody projected coming into the year, but he's got the opportunity. Mark, I know you got some stats on this guy, and we may have a little bit of a differing opinion, so I'm excited for that. But Hubbard, what are you doing with Chuba Hubbard right now? And let's talk dynasty for this, because I think it has more of a dynasty relevance. CMC designated to return, and all that means is he could return in the next 1 to 3 weeks. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's been bad, but I don't think he's good enough to cut into CMC's time. You know, they're trotting out Amir Abdullah out there. Royce Freeman's getting carries. It's pretty much been a full committee. They did cut Rodney Smith, but that was after they brought in Abdullah from the Vikings, and they seem to like him. I mean, his time has increased as he's been there, and Hubbard's getting a lot of volume. I just don't think that the numbers have been great for the volume that he's gotten. And I just watching him, I watch his team every week, and I'm never terribly impressed with him. And I really don't think that he's going to cut into CMC's time. So I think that he's the handcuff for CMC. But I see his playing time going way down once CMC is back. Now I'd hold him in Dynasty. It certainly would hold him. Might try to trade him to the CMC owner if I've got him and he doesn't. But I'd say that in redraft too. If you've had him and you've been playing him and he's not going to be any good for you anymore, if CMC comes back, maybe try to trade him to the guy who's got CMC on his roster. But I just really think that it's been a committee. I think CMC is going to get back in there, and it's going to be hard for them. They might want to manage his carries, but it's going to be hard for him to do that if he's healthy and playing well, because these other guys they're just fill-ins. They're just guys to give them a breather.
Yeah. So I'm not going to strongly disagree with you, but for fantasy football's sake, like how I did that, I'm going to take a little bit of a different spin on it. So for me, I just mentioned Michael Thomas not fully coming back. We saw Christian McCaffrey last year where he tried to come back and couldn't. And trust me, I own him in 2 leagues. I'm really hoping he does. Right. But the other little wrinkle in this, which I think you have to take obviously with a grain of salt, is was he or was he not mentioned in the trade talks with Houston? Because this is now the second time we've heard this come up, right? And I think from a dynasty perspective, you're looking at Hubbard, and I think whether you want to hold him or whether you want to sell him, you have a good pitch either way, which makes this, I think, a little interesting, right? You have the pitch of, okay, fantasy football is a very much what have you done for me lately? Kenny Golladay has almost lost all value because of that, right? Very talented receiver. What have you done for me lately? Devontae Parker, when he's healthy, looks good, but it's, again, what have you done for me lately? And that's kind of how this cycle goes. So I think Hubbard has more value than your typical handcuff that has a starter coming back. So for me, and maybe I'm wrong because I have tried to sell him a little bit, but I'm not trying to sell him at his handcuff value, right? If you can sell Hubbard right now as hey, this might be the heir apparent. Obviously, the coaching staff liked him enough to draft him with decent draft capital when you consider running backs, and they like him enough to give him in his rookie year. I mean, you look at the last few weeks, he's had 24 carries twice in the last 4 weeks. And one of those weeks, he had 6 targets out of the backfield as well. He's a steady producer. I mean, fantasy football, sometimes we don't want the guys that can score 25 or 0. We want those. If you can give me a steady 13, 14, and that's what he's been, steady Eddie, keep chugging along. Yeah. I think if I can pitch him to the right person, I'm selling him high. But where I strongly disagree with you is if I don't have CMC, I'm holding. I'm hoping I end up getting an RB1 out of this thing. If I don't have CMC, I'm not trading him to the CMC owner. It's kind of like Pollard in that same sense, right? You can't get Pollard's value by trading him to the Zeke owner. So you hold him in the hopes that Zeke gets hurt, because then his value is exponentially higher. I think Zeke's one of those, or Pollard's one of those guys that can perform like an RB1 given the opportunity. Talking to a Dallas fan here, so he should agree with that.
Yeah.
So I guess that's my disagreement on that. Any rebuttal?
No, I mean, I will say too, they've had a tough schedule. So, getting 24 carries for 80 yards or whatever it was here this last time, it's understandable when you're playing tougher teams. I don't put him quite in that Pollard category yet as a handcuff. I think he's still evolving. So I'm just going by what we're seeing right now on the field. So, but I tend to agree with you on some of that too.
All right, let's look at this next backfield. We'll go through these a little bit because I'm really excited about the next segment, Mark. But we're just a little tease, but I'm really excited. Anyways, next backfield we'll talk about is the Chicago backfield. And Mark, I'm really going to lean on you for this one. I'll go first, but I'm going to lean on you for this one because this is one that's hard for me. Okay, we got Herbert in Chicago, and the rookie has been impressive. I mean, impressive. He's looked really good. This was a guy that was either a 5th round draft pick in dynasty leagues or later. He was not if he was drafted in redraft and you drafted him, you're either terrible or Nostradamus, and I want to talk to you. But you have Montgomery, who just took over that backfield last year, right? Down the stretch, I felt like looked pretty solid those first 4 weeks and played some tough teams. But the thing with Montgomery before he hit that streak was having to split carries with Tariq Cohen. And I think Herbert might be a better version than Tariq Cohen. So what are your thoughts there, Mark? I guess for me, just to answer this one, if I have Herbert, I think I'm selling because I don't know that his value can get any higher. If Montgomery comes back, the best case scenario for Herbert, because he's not overtaking him, best case scenario is it ends up like the Buffalo backfield and it's Moss and Singletary back there, and you don't know who to start each week.
Yeah. I would definitely try to sell high on Herbert. He has been really good, and I've never been a big Montgomery fan, but I have to say, I thought he was looking better this year. It seemed like he had a little bit, if it's possible, he looked faster, which doesn't sound right. Guys don't get faster usually, but he seemed like he was hitting the holes and getting downfield a little faster than he had been. And so I was really kind of excited for him, but Herbert, he's looked really good, and I think he's earned more touches. And I'm kind of elevating him as one of the better handcuffs in the league. It's been a short sampling, but I think I've seen enough to think that he's going to be one of the better handcuffs in the league. I think he could, kind of cut into Montgomery's time when Montgomery does come back. I think they won't rush him back. They even said here recently that maybe they'll sit him. They got the bye. They play Pittsburgh this week. They got the bye. Maybe they'll sit him and bring him back after the bye because Herbert's just been doing well enough that they don't have to rush him back. So Herbert, man, he has definitely jumped up on my radar. And I'll tell you, I did draft him in the 5th round. I was looking at him in our league in the 5th round, and Tank Top Mike got in there and got him.
All he does is draft Herbert's right in the 5th round.
Herbert's in the 5th round, and they pan out for him. So I had my next dynasty. I was like, okay, I'm not going to let him get by me if I can help it. And I actually made a trade to get him and got him in as the 3rd pick in the 5th round, because he was sitting there at the top of the board, and I'm like, yeah, he's not going to last. So I went ahead and scooped him up, and he's already been in my starting lineup because of injuries and done a good job for me. So I'm impressed with him. And I think that you never know what Nagy's going to do, but I can see him cutting into Montgomery's time and maybe even hurting Montgomery a little bit. And I think, like I say, maybe one of the better handcuffs in the league.
So let me ask you this on Herbert, because this is an interesting thought. You're an owner of Herbert, and then we're in a league where you don't own him. What would you safely buy him for if you were just talking draft compensation, right? So if you weren't moving a player, say the guy's Herbert on a taxi squad or something like that, still, what are you safely in Dynasty trading for Herbert? Because I think right now is probably your only buy low opportunity. Maybe the guy's a little scared. Montgomery's designated for return. It's a touchy one, I think. I think normally you say handcuff, it's a third round value, but I don't think you can get them for a third straight right now.
No. I'm sitting here thinking about it as you asked. I was thinking you got to start with the second rounder there. I don't think I'd go a first for him, based on the fact that Montgomery's still going to be, he's still young and relevant. But I sure would go for with a second and
so
go
somebody,
after him.
Here's the question: if somebody offers you a 2022 second, are you taking it?
Yeah, I think I would take it. I might try to add just a little bit to that.
A little sweetener.
I would sell it up, and I'd say, hey, he's been in my starting lineup. I would sell it up. But yeah, I think a second rounder I would take for him. Yeah.
All righty. Moving on. We're going to look at, and I didn't do that on purpose, actually. Now I'm stuck. Inside joke. I wrote this one down. I don't think we got to spend a ton of time on it because I think everybody's probably in unison on this, but Alex Collins hasn't looked bad. He's just been Alex Collins and got banged up. I was the idiot that bought in once again to the Rashad Penny hype 2 weeks ago and bought him coming off injury reserve, and he's just been Rashad Penny. But that backfield, the reason I have it on here, it is a little interesting, right? Because Carson has been banged up a few times now. He's getting older in age. He did sign that extension contract. What are you doing in that backfield, Marky Mark? What do you want?
I would try to sell Alex Collins for right now. I don't think you'll get any value out of him if you wait too long. He's been decent, but he's 27 years old. He didn't play at all in 2019. He only played in 3 games in 2020, showing that lack of durability. But, he's in there. He fought through this recent injury. And they're on bye. I'd be saying, hey, he split with Penny, but Penny wasn't any good. It's going to be Alex Collins backfield. He's rested up another week. He should be the man moving forward. Carson may be out for the season. Yeah, I'd be trying to sell him based on that. I think if you wait beyond their bye, you're probably going to be sorry. I just don't. I think it's going to be a big time committee with him and DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. Maybe a little bit of Penny sprinkled in there if he can elevate, but it's hard to say if that'll happen.
Collins this year, you ready for my earth-shattering analysis here? Top notch. Collins to me this year is kind of like the off-brand version of Melvin Gordon, right? Okay. Yeah. He doesn't carry the same value, but there's a contender out there that needs a running back to put in that flex spot. So I think you might be able to get a third for Collins right now. And I think if you're a Collins owner who doesn't really need him, you take that all day. So, all right, we got, we're going to jump over the Giants. We had wrote down the Giants backfield, Booker with Saquon Barkley. Do you want to make any comment on that? I don't know. I was going to jump over it.
No, just he's looked good. He's probably earned more touches. Maybe they don't rush him back, but probably no value beyond that. He's a little bit older. So, once Saquon's back in, there's probably no value beyond that.
We'll give some tight end love right here. Ricky Seals-Jones and Logan Thomas. I tried to trade you for Ricky Seals-Jones. You didn't take it. But anyways, I digress. I put this one on here because Logan Thomas, Mark, was a guy that broke out at an older age at a position switch. And now here we got a guy that's very talented, very athletic, right? Ricky Seals-Jones, who they put him into the similar role, and he's looked pretty good. I don't know that he's outshined what Logan Thomas did in that role, but I wouldn't be shocked as Thomas gets back for them to keep Ricky Seals-Jones involved and really build upon a young tight end. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think that he's definitely earned some playing time. He's been in 100% the last 4 games. So he's been a 1-for-1 replacement for Logan Thomas, but they're not going to run a lot of 12 personnel, I don't think. So if anything, he'll cut into his time. Maybe they'll start platooning a little bit more. The production hasn't been there, but the volume certainly has been there. And he's been, a play or two away from doing really well. Maybe if something called back for penalty, just missing something in the end zone. He's been right there on the cusp of being really good. And I think he's definitely earned some time. And if they want to if they want to ease Logan Thomas back in, I could see them playing Ricky Seals-Jones more than he was, because he was at like 10 to 15% of the snaps before. And I think he's earned more than that. It's going to be interesting to see what they do when Thomas does come back.
Look, if you are trying to sell Ricky Seals-Jones, or if somebody comes trying to buy and you want to pump up that volume, here's all you got to say, right? Since week 2 of this season alone, he has 2 more touchdowns than Jacoby Myers has for his career receiving. So that's all you got to say. It's pretty bold.
Let me write that down. Yeah, let me write that down. I got Ricky Seals-Jones in 3 leagues, so let me write that down, see if I can get a little something out of him.
All right, so this next segment I'm really just pumped up about, and I have a stat to kick it off, Mark. Here we go. This is the Bad Burrito segment, and I just lost half the listener. Bad Burrito, what do you mean? So who is a player that you would like to give a bad burrito to? And here's what I mean. There was a tweet by Mike Reedy, FF, at Mike Reedy, FF, no free shout outs, on Twitter. And this is what he said, Mark. AJ Brown, the last 3 weeks since eating that bad burrito from the restaurant we won't mention because no free shout outs. You don't sponsor us, you don't get shout out. That's just how it works. But I would like for them to feed all of my fantasy receivers because after that bad burrito performance, it has been week 6, 9 targets, 7 receptions, 91 yards. Pretty good, but it gets better. The next week, 9 targets, 8 receptions, 133 yards and a touchdown. And you ask yourself, well, how can that get better? Last week, 11 targets, 10 receptions, 155 yards and a touchdown. So I'm expecting 2 touchdowns, 250 yards receiving on 20 catches this week. I think that's where we're trending. I may own him in a league or 2, so maybe that's it. And I'm a Titans fan. But so it's kind of a funny take here on who is a guy that just has underperformed, who, I mean, everybody was shouting that AJ Brown was a buy, right? So who's a guy now that could be a buy that you would just like to give one of those bad burritos and hope it's like the like it's like the Nintendo mushroom and makes them grow and get bigger? I'll let you kick this one off because you got a good one.
All right. Yeah, I don't have him rostered in any leagues, but I'd like to give one to Allen Robinson. He is right now a low-end wide receiver 5. Or the wide receiver 60 in PPR. So it just sounds weird to say that about Allen Robinson. And so looking into what's going on with him, he is getting the least separation on his routes run in the league. He is last in the league.
Trying to sell him still. Quit.
1.7 yards. So, but you know what, though? I don't think that's because he's declined. I think he just doesn't want to be there. You know, they gave him the franchise tag. They bring in Dalton and name him the starter. They bring in a rookie and who's got a learning curve that A-Rob doesn't have time to wait on, you know. I just don't think he's playing. He hasn't been playing with the same vigor that he normally does. You know, but at some point he's got to realize he's not helping himself if he wants to get a good contract for the last couple of years in the league. So, you know, maybe we should fire up some spoiled meat there and put it in a burrito for him and let's give it to him. You know, he's overcome Bortles and Trubisky. He should be able to do it with Dalton and Fields. You know, Amari Cooper was a wide receiver 18 with Dalton in 11 and a half games. There's no reason that he can't do it with Dalton and Fields. So, I just think that maybe he's lost a little heart, but he's got to remember he's got that contract to play for, and he's got to pick it up.
You know what was funny in the offseason about Allen Robinson? He was considered the safest wide receiver, borderline wide receiver 1 in the league. Like, this is a guy, don't overthink it. He's safe. He's quarterback proof. He's getting better quarterback play. And it just all has blown out. And the only explanation I have is he hates contract years, right? His last contract year with the Jags, he kind of underperformed, and then they extended him by 1 year, and he played 1 game, had 1 catch, and was hurt. But then he comes back with Chicago, looks quarterback proof again, right? Looked really good. And it's a contract year again. And he's like, nope, not going to press it. Last time I pressed it on a contract year, broke my leg or tore up my knee or whatever it was. So he's just waiting until next year. I own him in Dynasty. I get it. He's going to be a wide receiver like 5 next year. So to like top 5, not wide receiver 5. But anyways, I digress. I definitely would love to give him a bad burrito, and I hope it would help him out. One of my guys here is near and dear to my heart. And let me start off on this, that this guy hasn't necessarily played bad. He just wasn't getting the opportunities we were expecting him to get. And then now he's battling a little bit of an injury, and that's Antonio Gibson. But here's the thing. Antonio Gibson, there was a little group that thought he could be the RB1 this year, or a top 3 RB. I was one of those guys. And I don't mean RB1 by like a top RB1 through 12. I'm talking about the RB1. And I think what really set that off was when the coaching staff from Washington came out and said, we're going to use him like CMC. He's getting the CMC role. And everybody jumped around and shouted and screamed. And I was beating my chest. And Mark, I don't know if you know this or not, but the most snaps he's played this year, 65%. I don't know that CMC, when healthy, has ever played that much snaps. I don't understand. I think the most frustrating thing about him is early on in the season before the injury, he was averaging like 5 yards a touch. Get him the ball, he's going to get you 5 yards. 5 plus 5 is 10. That's a first down. But the last 3 weeks, and this is the scary part for Antonio Gibson, under 42% of the snaps, right? Battling that shin injury. I'm really hoping on this bye week, while getting healthy, he stops and gets a bad burrito.
Yeah, I see him quite a bit too. If Carolina's not the regional game, then Washington is, or if they play at different times, and we see a lot of the Washington football team. And yeah, it's been kind of maddening seeing the usage, and definitely especially the lack of usage in the passing game, because he came in kind of profiling as more of a receiver than a running back, and we wondered if he'd be an RB1 type because he might be more of a receiving back. And the script has flipped there. And they use him more as a runner. They didn't lose any of that receiving ability, and the fact that they don't pass to him more is just maddening. And yeah, it's definitely frustrating not to see him get more. I don't have him rostered, but it kind of hurts me just to see the way they use him, and knowing that he's got the ability. It does, good size, good athletic profile. Guy could be killing it if they just kind of let him loose.
He had under 20 rushes, I think, for his college career. What's going on in his head? I'd love to ask him. Like, okay, you couldn't run the ball in college. They wouldn't let you. And now you're in the NFL, and they won't let you do the thing that made you a draft pick. I'm befuddled. But I still think the talent's there. I am a little worried, if I'm honest. Don't let Brandon hear this. I hope he's not listening. I am a little worried now that we're in year 2, and both years he's had nagging injuries. No, nothing major, right? Not a hamstring or knee, but I think it was turf toe last year, and now it's the shin issue. Makes me a little nervous. So I think for dynasty purposes, he might be a buy right now, because I think the value is a little low. Unless you're trying to buy them from me, and then that's just not going to work. But anyways, I'll say my next one, and then I'll let you wrap us up, because I think I like your second one a little bit better than my second one, just to be honest. My next guy is Russell Gage. Isn't that who I said? Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
For a minute, I thought I stole yours. Russell Gage is mine. And this is a guy, we feel like as fantasy football owners that we're smart. We look at a guy who's supposed to get more opportunity, Mark, and what has he done with more opportunity in the past? He's produced. He's got 9, 10, 11 targets, and he's getting a better offensive coordinator. This shouldn't be rocket science, but for some reason it is. I don't know. Russell Gage this year, I was really big on him, and I had an opportunity to unload him in our league a few times for pretty good pick compensation and held on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kicking myself now. 25 years old. Ridley has not been Ridley for the year, which even makes it more frustrating. I think a lot of this is probably on Matt Ryan. I hate to say it, but Arthur Smith has not looked like a great head coach. And without Henry in the backfield, his play calling has not looked good either. So I think that has really hurt them. I also wonder, if Gage has been healthy at any point this season, right? So he didn't play much week 1 because he was banged up a little bit. Comes out week 2, gets 7 targets, doesn't do a ton with it. Then is out for several games. Comes back after the bye, and I thought, okay, this is it. Has 6 targets, 67 yards, a touchdown. And then this week plays 68% of the snaps without a target. What gives? Get my man a bad burrito. Mess up that stomach, and he'll forget about everything else except how to catch the ball. Help me out, Mark.
Yeah. No, I watched that game last week, and every time I saw Tajay Sharp catch a ball, I was just thinking, what the heck, man? what happened? What happened to Russell Gage? I think part of it is it seemed like they're just kind of getting used to Brian and some of the other guys they're starting to hit their stride a little bit in this offense. So I think there's better days ahead. But to see Tajay Sharp when Ridley's out again and see Tajay Sharp get all those targets and catches, it kind of makes you wonder there. So I agree. Let's give Russell the bad burrito, because I was with you preseason. I thought he was going to be a good one, and I did not get him in any redraft, but I sure was targeting him. A lot of other people were too, picking him high, and a lot of them are sorry right now. So let's get him one. I agree.
The only thing I can compare it to is a few years back, AB had just left the Steelers, and everybody thought James Washington was going to be that guy. And then Deontay Johnson came along and screwed all that up. Right. Yeah. But this isn't even a thing where somebody's come along and messed it up. Like, anyways. All right. Tell us your next guy, Marky Mark. And this is going to wrap up the show.
All right. I'm going to go with T. Higgins, wide receiver 45 in PPR right now. He did miss a couple of games, so he might be in the wide receiver 3 range, but I think a lot of people were looking for him to, compete for the top spot there, because he built up a rapport with Burrow last year. And, we all knew Chase coming in already had that rapport, but I think a lot of people thought Higgins couldn't compete for the one there. He did have a 15 target game a couple weeks ago against Baltimore, but in the other games, he's averaging just shy of 7 targets per game, which isn't bad. He only has 2 TDs on the season right now, and I think that's part of the problem. Plus, the yards just aren't there. The targets are there, but the yards aren't there. He had 97 yards last week against the Jets, but he hasn't come close to 100 in any other of the 6 games that he's played. So the 5 games besides that game there. He's another one of these guys that's been low in separation. He's at 8th worst in the league at 2.1 yards, but he's tied in that category with Jamar Chase, and we know Jamar Chase has been doing just fine. He's the wide receiver 3. I thought maybe it was A-Dot. I looked at the A-Dot. He's 10.7. Chase is 15.0. I mean, he should be getting some good, high-quality targets and doing more with them. But you look at they've been spreading the ball around. Chase has 7 touchdowns, but you got in the receiving game, Mixon's got 2, P. Ryan's got 1, Chris Evans has 1, CJ Uzoma decided to become a thing. He's got 5. Boyd's got 2. They're spreading the ball around a lot. Chase is the top dog, and besides that, they're spreading the ball around a lot. So I really think that the numbers aren't bad there. That A-Dot is good. If he can average 7 targets per game, that's good. I think we just need to get him that bad burrito, and he'll start doing some things.
The only reason I don't want Higgins to get a bad burrito is because we both know a guy that owns him in like every league I know. So I would not like Ian, my normal co-host, to get more with Higgins because he's got some good lineups. All right. But no, I'm right there with you. I got Ian all tore up a few weeks back. And then last time we recorded, we talked a little bit more about this. T. Higgins is touchdown dependent this year. And I said it at week 5 or 6, and got about berated by Ian on that. But no, you look at it, and until this week, his year high in yards was 62 yards. I'm looking at some stats right quick. Yeah. He had a 15 target game, only 7 receptions, 62 yards, no touchdowns. So, it's not necessarily a guy that, has been terrible, but you want to flex to at least get you 10, 11, 12 points. And unless you're in PPR, he hasn't even sniffed that. I mean, we're in a half PPR league. And until this week, without a touchdown, his point total high was 9.7. Now, maybe it's trending in the right direction, right? He had 15 targets, 9.7, 6 targets last week, 97 yards. Maybe it's trending up a little bit, but I really think it's going to depend on game script. And if you look back at last year, he produced even with Burrow out, but you didn't have Chase. You didn't have Uzoma. I'm sorry, I know I'm butchering that, but you didn't have him. And Mixon wasn't playing, and they weren't running the ball as much. They were throwing it 40 times a game. So I'm not necessarily out on Higgins' talent, but I think with Chase there, he's always going to be the second option. And I think coming into this year, especially before Chase, Higgins was being bought in dynasty leagues as a wide receiver 1 for the next 5 or 6 years, decade. And now he's not going to be that. So it's interesting. I think Higgins' ceiling right now is a flex or a wide receiver 3 if you are in a league that has to start 3 receivers. And it's just bonkers to think that after what we saw last year. He's wide receiver 47 on the year. He missed 2 games. But he's got to play some easy defenses and just hasn't really performed. So something to watch. It's hard to determine if he's a buy, right, Mark? Because I don't think you can buy him cheap necessarily. And if you buy him too high, I mean, even if you were to spend a second round pick on Higgins right now, which I think most people would, there's still a chance that could backfire. Think about that. Like, it's just crazy how different we are from start of the season. But
I think it could be had. I don't know that you could buy low, like you said, but if you wanted to shore up that flex, that's the only thing I'd be looking to do is to bring him in and put him in that flex spot. Because I don't think that you can put him in your 1 or 2 spot right now with the way things are going.
I think he's an off-season buy because I don't think that if there's a contender, I don't think he sells them because of the depth, and if they're not a contender, he's a young receiver. So I think he's an off-season buy that you try to get as teams are restructuring their teams.
Yeah,
Mark, I have really appreciated you coming on the show. We've talked about it a few times, so we will definitely have you back. You're much more pleasant to talk to than the other guy that's on here with me quite often.
Yeah, that guy. I don't know about him.
So any parting words as we wrap up and go watch this terrible football game that's unfolding?
No, thanks for having me, and love to do it again. And let's go see that barn burner, the Colts and the Jets.
All right, let's hit the outro.
Thank you for listening. Follow For FF's Sake on all social media platforms and search for us wherever you get your podcasts.